engineers, just like the Beatles had incredible engineer produced, you know, people are working with them, and they push the envelope. All of a sudden he's going, I want you to double the part, but we're going to go with this compressor. And I said, it sounds like shit, what are you doing? Trust me. And then he plays back the 2 tracks, I'm like, oh my God, that is amazing. So I just learned so much from that man. I mean, Gene and Paul were great, you know, mentors for everything in the music business and music in general, but to work with such a talented producer, I'm so excited you're here virtually. Okay, this is
I want to connect this to Chris too, because what Chris has been doing for the last few years has been magical. But on that topic of that Revenge album, Bob, did you have a conversation with Gene? Did you give him a titty twister? How did you dial him in?
No, I didn't really have to light a fire under him. I think the fire was there. Everybody was looking to do something really important. Makeup was off. You know, they wanted to set the stage for a new era for the band. And so everybody brought their best game, and it was a fun record to make, actually. It wasn't easy, but you know, nothing really great is easy. But it was fun. I don't think there were any real, you know, fights in the control room or any of that sort of stuff going on during making this thing. And Bruce, by the way, you all know it already, but Bruce is like a savant. You know, there isn't anything that you can ask for on guitar. I would have 1,000 ideas, and here was a guy who could actually realize them. And yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it. I really did think that Gene came to the table that time in a big way. He was energized during that period, so not me, he did it.
Well, there is an incredible testament to Bruce's years with Kiss, and that's with Chris Jericho's band, Quarantine. Holy shit. When that started, I was like, what a cool idea. And everything they put out, am I crazy for thinking that everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger with everything that you put out?
Well, what happened with Quarantine is we started it during the lockdown. Nothing was going on, nobody knew what we were doing. So we just started, let's just record some obscure 80s Kiss non-makeup songs with a couple friends of mine. And at the time, nobody was releasing new music to the radio. So I said, well, let's put it out to the radio people and see. We did No 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 was our first song, and it got to like number 21 on rock radio. And I was like, this is insane. It's a super obscure song, the Crazy Nights record, but it's a great song.
Yes.
And there's a huge cachet of material. Bob is shaking his nodding his head from that era. So then we released another, and here we are 5 years later, where we've had 4 top 20 hits, 1 top 10 hit. Our video we just did for Unholy did 1 million views in 1 week. And whether you know these songs like we do, it's great to hear them on a new platform. A lot of people haven't heard the songs, but these songs are amazing. This is great. It's still, in my opinion, the greatest era of Kiss ever. Ever. I don't care what anyone says, and I appreciate 70s, and I love 90s Kiss. 80s Kiss is so good and so underrated. So we're really honored to be able to fly the flag of all these great songs. And they're fun. That's the best part. It's fun to play, to perform. We can wear glittery sequin spandex pants and long coats and yellow and green and blue. I mean, that's rock and roll. And get people to do chants of do it! Fuck, how fun is that, right?
I mean, Chris is such a showman, right? We all know his wrestling career, which is also incredible show business, and I'm very petrified when he puts me in the front row in a wrestling. Okay, he did that once, okay? But my, family loves, everything to do with wrestling. I learned so much. But and I have to tell the story about when Chris, and I've known Chris a long time, and I knew he was from Winnipeg. I was probably your first guitarist you saw. He was
Animalized Tour, March 9th, 1985.
There you go.
Animalized Tour.
I can move from Winnipeg. I know I got a lot of fans there. I was the beginning of Kiss for them. But it was funny when he told me about No 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 and he shared with me. I loved it. I loved his band. He had some amazing players that could really do that energy and stuff that I obviously have a harder time now being older, you know, but we kept in touch about it. Then all of a sudden he actually asked me to do, my next song is going to be a Paul song, it's going to be Heart of Chrome, where you play lead guitar. Now it's the lockdown, I'm like, I would love to, that would be amazing. And you pushed me to figure out how to actually record in my home. You know, which a lot of people do now, by the way, because digital.
At the time, a lot of people didn't. Though.
Right. And then I figured it out, you know, a cabinet in my laundry room, you know, a fancy microphone on it, I'm recording, and it sounded great. I was able to imitate it. You know, a lot of it, you know, is how you play it, okay?
You nailed it.
Yeah, I nailed it, and I loved it. And then I remember us having this conversation. Oh, you're releasing it? Is my name on it? Anyway, yeah, Quarantine featuring, you know, Chris Jericho, featuring Chris Kullick, you know, it was very nice of you. I appreciate that. I was so excited, just sitting home, nobody could do anything, you know. But, and I've been so supportive of his guys, I'm tight with all of his band. And obviously, the love fest that he shares about my era is very special to me. And some of my friends joke, oh, did you see the Bruce Kullick tribute band?
By the way,
even when you do Animalize, you're doing the live concert.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's not,
That's right.
The Animalize album, it's the
That's
live
right.
show, okay?
Yeah, we do some makeup songs, but we do them really fast, the way that Kiss did on the Animalized tour.
I had that famous Animalized show that would play on MTV all
The best
the
one.
time.
One of the greatest gigs of all time.
Detroit. We want to talk to you, by the way. I don't know if we have a production person, but there is supposed to be somebody with a microphone in the audience. And what I'm thinking is, if you have questions, maybe we can get to the aisles. And is there somebody here in production that can bring a microphone out to the front of house? We'll figure that out, but we will, well, we have somebody who wants to ask a question here. Until we get a microphone here, are you guys okay with me starting with questions from the audience? What is your name and where are you from?
Stephanie from Sydney, Australia.
All right.
And I'm just wondering, when the reunion happened, Carnival of Souls got shelved, and at the time you probably thought it was never going to get released. I'm just wondering how you felt about that album and how you feel about the fact that it was put to the side when the reunion happened.
Yeah.
So Carnival of Souls. You know, Bob, you actually started that record. I don't know how it happened that all of a sudden we cut the tracks that were going to be I Walk Alone, the one song I sang, you know, which was the last track on the record, ironically enough. Even though Gene and I rearranged some of it, but we recorded it to get it started. And I'm so sorry that you couldn't continue on that, because we did go a little more towards what was considered grunge. You know, we started, and Gene was very attracted to that. You know, I used to describe it as like, well, it's going to be a darker, meaner, you know, revenge album, okay? And that meant, you know, a guy that worked with Alice in Chains and stuff. And I was going through a lot of stuff in my personal life at the time that I just kept writing songs and riffs, and they were usually they were very dark and kind of wild. Paul very uncomfortable with the vibe, but they weren't sure what to do next. Then meanwhile, of course, if you're not aware, we already, you know, filmed MTV Unplugged, which also had a bit of a clause that people didn't know there'll be a reunion, you know, a real reunion tour if Ace and Peter come out, which in the you know history obviously very important and obviously changed the course of my era. So that record I really gave my heart and soul into, even though it was dark and everything, and then it had to be shelved for a while. The mixes that came out were all weird, you know. It was a tough time for me because first of all they go off to this huge, they're selling out stadiums and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, they still paid me because they kind of knew. But what happens if Ace and Peter just quit 1 month in? Right. You know what I mean? Kids still exist with Eric Singer and myself. So it was an awkward time. It was real hard for me, but I learned, you know, that well, my talent will get me through this if I stay positive. Eventually, the record came out, and they did a little press for it. Jungle, the first single, right, came out, which was one of my co-writes. But it's a strange record. You either love it or hate it. We know, like the elder Paul doesn't really like it. My biggest regret was that Bob didn't hang in there and do a darker, uglier album for us, you know. But I'm still proud of it in many ways. And it's just another one of those interesting, you know, facets of what is Kiss and the Kiss catalog.
Bruce, was it communicated to you during that reunion that should Ace step out, that you would step in?
No, but it was the only, no, you know, I think it was if the whole thing self-imploded.
Okay, then go.
Not so much, oh, we'll pop you in. And by the time Ace wasn't happy, and they were seeing that things were looking iffy, okay, I remember hearing, and I'm thinking, would I, become the spaceman? This is weird. What if they asked me, what would I do? And in the end, it was much easier and the right path to have someone like Tommy. First of all, I would have had to assume the role of the spaceman and do every riff much closer to Ace, which wasn't really my style, where Tommy knew that and embraced it. So in the end, I really think that it wasn't meant to be for me to remain a Kiss, which was something I did miss greatly, but it would have kind of pooped on my era if I suddenly then, and then part 2, I became the spaceman. It just would have been weird, and I do think, even though everybody loved Ace and wanted to see Ace, that was his decision not to be in the band anymore. They could fire him, and Tommy does an admirable job of keeping it going. And Eric Singer's done a great job as the Catman, even though at least I had 5 glorious years with him, between Unplugged and Alive 3 and the Revenge album. I know Bob loved working with Eric, and I know that Bob, if Eric wasn't up to top level, there would have been a different drummer there. You remember that? We were looking at drummers. He was auditioning drummers because we knew that Eric Carr was sadly going to be too sick to perform, and then sadly, of course, he passed away during that period. But again, it was a weird transition time, but when I look back at it, it was all meant to be for a reason, how it all planned out. So,
Bob, I want to ask you about the Destroyer record, one of the greatest records of all time, and it really took Kiss to the next level. Here you are in 1976 or whatever, you've got this band, they've got some steam, but what was your mission when you started making Destroyer? Because it was next level all across the board.
Well, okay. So I went to see Kiss play live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Somebody had called me to see if I was interested in producing the band, and so I went to see them live, and they played to 9,000 15-year-old boys. And there was a girl in the audience. And then we met in New York to talk about what the possibilities were. And I said to them, there was a famous Marlon Brando movie from the 50s called The Wild One. And it's a movie about 2 motorcycle gangs that come into this small town. One is led by Marlon Brando, and the other one's led by Lee Marvin. Marlon Brando's guys, they're all bad guys, they're all motorcycle gang guys, but Marlon Brando's team seemed to have a little bit more heart, and Marlon is the kind of guy that the girl in town, the pretty girl in town, decided she could fix. She said to herself, I love this guy, I'm going to fix him. And whereas Lee Marvin was just pure evil and danger and, repulsive basically in the audience. So I said to the guys, as far as women are concerned, right now you're Lee Marvin. And what we need to be is Marlon Brando. We want every woman in the world to fall in love with you and to think they can fix you. So we need to add a little bit of vulnerability and a lot more sort of candor, and we need to expose a little bit of our more sensitive side, etc., while still retaining the ballsy, heavy rock bass of the band and everything. They liked it. They got it because they were, they're all fans of media, and Gene in particular was a fan of movies and television and stuff, so they completely understood what it was that I was talking about, and that was the mission, that we went in to try to create something. So when I sat at the piano, figuring out, dum, do you love me? Dum, do you love me? I had this vision of Paul on his knees in front of the audience, saying, do you love me? And then every girl in the audience rushing to the stage, saying, yeah, I love you, and that was the impulsion behind the makeup of the record. Yeah.
There's so many theatrical elements. There's theatrical elements on there that you've used with Alice and with Pink Floyd. You had an Revenge record. Is this something that was in your background, that theatrical, almost Broadway type, bravado?
Yeah, I started off working in television when I was 8 years old. And then did theater in my teenage and stuff, and I actually thought I was going to be an actor. But I always loved music, and honestly, I would have taken any gig where I could make stuff. I just wanted to make stuff. I wanted to make theater, I wanted to make music, I wanted to make movies. And I got hired by the great Jack Richardson, who was the producer of the Guess Who at the time, a band from your hometown. And at that moment, when he hired me, they had the #1 song in the world, American Woman, which was #1 on all the charts, and they were, for a moment, the biggest band in the world. So I got hired by the guy who produced that, and he took me under his wing. He kind of nurtured me, but I brought all of my sort of theatrical, underpinnings and things to the job. And I got Alice Cooper. They gave me Alice Cooper when Alice Cooper came in through the door, because that was just more in my bailiwick than it was in Jack's or anybody else's in the company. And lucky me, because the first record I ever produced was Love It to Death.
Great question, great response. I know we have people lining up now to ask questions, so
Yes,
go over to
we do.
that
We
side.
have a question
We have somebody with a
for Chris
microphone.
Jericho.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name's Ezrin, Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a recovering Jericho-holic.
All right.
Thank you.
So several times Paul mentioned doing another KISS cruise. If that does come to pass, can we get you on it?
So I did the KISS cruise in 2015 with my main band, Fozzy. And when we were on that cruise, I realized I could do a wrestling cruise. And we've done 6 Chris Jericho Rock and Wrestling Ragers now. So once again, here's the best part about KISS, and we all know this. Music is amazing, the guys are great, but the message always hit me. Follow your dreams, do great things, believe in yourself. And I thought I could do a fucking cruise. If KISS can do it, I can do it. So I would love to do another KISS cruise. I love the idea of this being the on-land KISS cruise. The only thing is, now that I have my own cruise, it would be hard to go back to like the deck number 10 when I'm used to being up top in the big boy suite. As a matter of fact, we had a cruise a few years ago. My cruise docked, and 6 hours later, the KISS cruise people came on, and the KISS was leaving that. And I was in the Haven, is what it's called, and I was in the room, the suite that was going to be Gene's suite, and I had the biggest party ever. Man, this place was trash. I was like,
I was
how
there.
are they gonna, you were there.
I was there.
How are they gonna clean this up? Gene's gonna be here in 6 hours, it's gonna flip. So I wrote him a note. I said, sorry dude, I apologize. I hope they're able to clean this up for you. But yeah, the KISS cruise, once again, another pioneering idea that just brought the whole community of fans and friends together. And KISS is the fucking best. Put that on a t-shirt.
Those rock and wrestling cruises are some of my favorite moments I've ever had. Wrestling fans, like KISS fans, are so loyal. And you say anything on that cruise that can be a catchphrase, and it will just turn into a chant. Those rock and wrestling cruises. If you've never done them, I highly recommend them. There's just such a great positive energy out there. It's a great question, and thank you for that. I'm going to go over here. Do we have somebody over here on this side of the stage?
Yes, sir.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name is Mike. I am from Belleville, Illinois.
All right, Mike, what is your question?
First, I want to thank Bruce for being such a good person and such a great musician. I've met you several times.
Thank you. Amen.
Also, your better half, Lisa, she's just really a great soul. My question is there a solo that you are most proud of in the band?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked sometimes your favorite songs, favorite album, and in this case, let's take a look at the solos. I think it's great for me to be connected to a few, okay, so I can't give like a one answer. Certainly, I think Tears Are Falling became something real important to a lot of people, and, I'm very proud of what I was able to put together with that, and I even had some assist from Paul with the harmony intro part. Interesting song too, it's really such a fun one to play. And then if you move ahead a bit, there's obviously a lot of speedy stuff, but on hot in the shade to do an acoustic solo that was kind of almost romantic, you know what I mean? And I came up with it. And a quick story about that, Paul. First I thought I'd play a lead guitar, not an acoustic, and Paul was like, no, I really hear this on acoustic, kind of like in a Led Zeppelin song. He runs out to Tower Records to get it to me, and I was already like 75% done by the time he came back with his Guild guitar, figuring out the solo. And then, you know, moving forward, stuff like Unholy, I'm so proud of. These like wildly, you know, manic, you know, powerful kind of playing for my balls, as they used to push me. You got to play with your cojones, Bruce. Silly stuff like that. But all of them, I mean, you know, the key, and I've really been enjoying like listening to the Dress to Kill live stuff, you know, and listening to Ace in '75, how it's always the guitar player's role to really make the song, like make a song within the song, you know, and make something memorable. And my era was a little more the flashy guitar playing, but I have to say, anytime I could give it melody and its own kind of like emotion to it that will connect with the fans, then I won, and then the song becomes better. That's the goal.
Great question, thank you. We're going on this side of the stage.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Doyle Roush. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, the college football capital of the country right now.
And a great Funny Bone Comedy Club. What is your question?
Bruce, a lot of us were down in Nashville at Nature's Fest a couple of years ago, and it was great to see you play with Vinny and Ace, two people who have stylistic differences, but also unique personalities. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like to be with both those guys at the same time?
Great question.
It was really very, very surreal, the whole thing. The honest thing, it started off with, of course, a great plan that there would actually be a core band, real drums, and a bass player who would sing. And wait, what, did I miss something? No, you were there?
I want to see how you handled
Yeah, okay. Setting it up.
Yes, I was there. I was there.
Started out with a plan. Yes, go ahead.
My wife's off stage. She's going to know. I'm going to tell her. Fair enough. Okay.
He's the nicest guy. I'll put an exclamation point on it when he's done.
So I run into Vinny on the way there, like before. I mean, it was a little, maybe 2 hours before, and I had questions from like, which part are you going to take on the ending of this song? You know, what are you going to do? And he's like, whatever you want to do. I'm like, well, pick a part. You know what I mean? No, I'm here for you. I mean, the whole conversation was like, what? You know, and he was very kind and sweet about it, but I was kind of like, this isn't helping. Then, of course, I hear, there is no drummer, okay? We're playing the tracks. Who's going to start the tracks? What is that? Are we not in ears with a click and stuff? Then I get the call from Ace Frehley. I'm not doing it. I go, let's have a conversation. It kind of was like iffy. Well, and it's really odd. I asked my wife to pull it up, because she actually filmed it when Ace's conversation on my phone, okay? And I'm listening to it, and she has it, so I'm hearing the audio, and it's pretty precious. It's really, I should transcribe it sometime. Ace was wonderful, and we became real kumbaya about it, because I kept going like, for the fans, we gotta do this, because Ace was dead against not having a drummer. He's never played without a drummer, and he was saying that, you know, like, I don't, you know, what the fuck, why is he a drummer, you know, what do you, I'm like, I know the tracks, Ace, I have heard them, and I know the guy who created them will be there, will start it. Of course, when I went out first for War Machine, and the guy, I didn't even know where he was when he started it. And War Machine has the repeating riff. Until I figured out where I was, that took 3 minutes, you know. And then the optics of Vinny to be up on the tank, which I didn't really know was going to happen. It was like, to me, it was like Star Trek. Like he was like the Borg, you know, like a woman in the Borg or something. It was very creepy. But, you know, out of respect to Vinny and his great songwriting and the importance of history, when he was there, I wore like an Ankh scarf, you know what I mean? Which he really loved that. And then Ace comes out, and we're all playing together. And that was kind of really special, even though I think Ace got confused with the last song we were doing, and you know, everybody was starting a different song. But we pulled it together, and very ironically, was at the very end of Deuce, you know, Ace told me, you play this, you just solo out at the ending, I don't need to play. But Ace's amp, you know, sometimes an amp can unplug itself, the speaker cable can come out if there's too much vibration, and he was really loud. So all of a sudden, where's Ace? I don't hear anything. And I'm looking at Vinny, and he's playing. I still don't hear anything. Meaning, I was the only one playing to the drums and bass. So I don't even know if Vinny had his volume on, you know what I mean? Although he was like playing, you know? So all I know is when I got off the stage, I was like, oh, thank God, that's over. What else can I say, you know? I'm not sad I did it. I don't want to ever repeat that with, with a situation like that. Because, look, Vinny is eccentric. I got a quote once that he's the Howard Hughes of Kiss, you know, even though he's been getting out there a little more on occasion. But, you know, unfortunately, the bad side was things didn't actually go as planned, but the good side was it actually happened. You had 3 guitar players at Kiss performing, as much as it was a bit. What was your take on it?
It was hilarious because so we were there too, right? And the venue was closed. Bob, you couldn't get in there. There was like locked doors, and everyone's waiting outside to get in, right? Was anybody in Nashville? Okay, so everyone's waiting outside the venue, and the doors are closed. They open the door, and here's Vinny on top of the tank.
He just starts.
Soloing.
Just starts.
Now, when I say soloing, this is not Eruption, a minute and a half. This is freaking 20 minutes of soloing.
As people are
walking in, but it never ended. It just kept going and going and going. I was like, oh my God. And then like you said, that you guys came on and the drums were kind of out of sync at a certain point. Ace started Cold Gin, and you guys were playing Deuce, and it was, I know you guys, and it was so cool to see, but I will never forget Vinnie Vincent on top of a fucking tank, soloing for 20 minutes. When you first come in, you're like, yeah! And then you're like, he's still going!
And then there's another element to it, which is they didn't want people recording, and everyone's first instinct when they walked in was to go, the fuck? And start filming it because it was so hot. So,
Bob, when you guys did Revenge and Vinny was involved in the songwriting, did you ever have any interactions with him at all, or were the songs already done by the time you were recording with them?
No, I saw Vinny a couple of times, but I wasn't in the room when he was writing. I was in the room with Gina Paul for most of the songs, but not with Vinny. Yeah. Anyway, Chris. So, first of all, I have to say I'm a fan of the band. Second of all, I have to say kayfabe. And third of all, I have to say, the reason I said that is because when I was a teenager, I picked corn on Whipper Billy Watson's farm. That's all for Chris.
That's an old school wrestler. So before Bob made some of the greatest albums of all time, he picked corn at a wrestler's farm. There you go.
really? Who's next up? Which side of the stage are we? Did we go right? Oh, we'll start over here on this side of the stage. What is your name? Where are you from?
My name is Matteo from Germany.
Hi, Matteo.
I have a question for Bruce. I saw Bonfire this year, and they always have Sword and Stone on the set list, which Paul co-wrote. I think it's very unfortunate it didn't end up on Crazy Nights Records. And my question is, if there's any shelf material you would have loved to see on any of your Kiss era albums.
And any material that you would have liked to have seen that didn't make it on the albums that you would like to have seen? For Crazy Nights specifically?
For any
or any of the work that you did, any material that you would have liked to see laying on an album that you...
Bob, do you remember Do You Want to Touch Me Now? It was a completely recorded track, tight as can be. I didn't do the solos because we didn't have the vocal on it yet. So this is like one other song that should have been on Revenge, could have been. I remember you and Paul weren't real happy with the melody for the chorus or something. You weren't really convinced. It was co-written with Snake Sabo, actually, from Skid Row. And I have a perfect version of it, just the backing of the track, and it sounds amazing. So I'm really sorry that never happened. But I think really the most featured song of my career that never got released was Sword and Stone.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So maybe we'll hear it tonight,
Wow.
Bruce, why wasn't that song used?
Producers have opinions, and Bob understands that being a producer, but somehow Nevison, who they were putting a lot of trust in, because he delivered such hits with Heart and Ozzy, he just didn't hear it, you know what I mean? And yet, Other people covered it, you know, meanwhile, and then I know a lot of the Kiss fans that collect and all, they know about it, they've heard it, but boy, I could have made a little bit more money, Bob, if that was on that record, right?
It's interesting, Bruce, because Paul Dean from Loverboy released that song, maybe in the States, but in Canada, it was actually a pretty big hit on the radio, Sword and Stone.
Really? And covering with Desmond, you know, and Desmond Child is such a brilliant writer. And Desmond did places, a few places, but it didn't, you know, I think it would have generated more action if it was with Kiss, you know, on Crazy Nights.
It's a great song.
We got a little over 10 minutes left, so I want to try to get as many of your questions in as possible. So go back over here on this side of the stage. What is your name? Where are you from?
My name is Keenan. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. And my favorite member of Kiss is Eric Carr. And so I was just hoping that Bruce and Bob, since you both worked with him, could share your thoughts on Eric and his contributions to Kiss, and if there are any funny stories maybe the fans haven't heard. Thanks.
Well, I got to tell you, the very first time I met Eric, I would barely call it a meeting, but my brother Bob took me up to one of the studios in Manhattan. I'm not sure which one, maybe Right Track or something. And they were working on Creatures of the Night, and they were mixing Love It Loud. And there was Eric Carr. You know, he's not a tall guy, you know, but the hair was huge. And he's just lounging on one of the couches. All studios have, like, beautiful lounges, you know. And, you know, I said hi, but I didn't really know him. And it was really weird. They were working on the fade to Love It Loud, you know, how it goes away and it comes back and stuff like that. And it was really a trip. I really loved what I was hearing. But, really, I got to know Eric very well on the Animalized tour, because now I'm really the new guy, technically temporarily, but which became actually permanent until '96. But it was funny, he was already jaded by the fame and what it was to be in Kiss with all the ups and downs. I know Bob knows, he didn't like doing the Elder. He said, this is a big mistake, you know, stuff like that. But certainly Animalized, what a great drum sound, right? And then Creatures even had a bigger one anyway previously. But I remember hanging out with Eric, and Eric would be, you know, I was having like the time of my life. I'm playing lead guitar with Kiss. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. And Eric was like, you know, he complained about something. At one point, I just said like, stop, please. Anybody would give their left nut to be in the band. Stop it, please. We became very close. I don't want you to think that he was a negative guy. He was very, very lovely, and he loved the fans. He was the guy who would answer every, you know, they used to write that back then. It wasn't emails, and he would write them back, and he'd go down to the lobby and meet the fans. It didn't matter if it was, you know, 5 degrees out and we're in Sweden, and he would head out and make sure he could meet the fans and sign autographs. And he was super creative and sing great, write great songs. He was a tremendous drummer, very powerful. He was very funny. The banter between Eric Carr and Paul was always very precious. And I think some of that was just them burning off their nervous energy, kind of. They would one-up each other with silly things. And, you know, Gene would be like in the bathroom taking a number 2, and they're throwing toilet paper over the thing, you know, pranking. He'd eat chocolate bars for breakfast, some crazy things like that. But he was really a special guy, so creative. It was very sad, of course, that he wasn't well enough to work with Bob on Revenge, but I'm glad, as sad as it was, but we did it for the right reasons. We were able to have him appear on the record. And he sang great backgrounds for God Gave. You know, I have one track of that, one sample where, you know, in the quiet part, and you really hear Eric's voice. He had such a beautiful voice. So I loved doing Rockology with him. That was a lot of fun, his solo record, which is very popular on streaming.
Bruce,
that? Yeah.
I didn't realize, I made a mistake that I thought we were going to the top of the hour. This is actually, they're about to get started on the Doc McGee Q&A right now.
Okay.
So I do want to say, talking about Eric and yourself, it really means a lot to us as Kiss fans, how approachable and kind you have been to us over the years. So, thank you guys for coming out for this segment. I also want to make a note. Chris Jericho is one of the best interviewers I've ever seen. His podcast right now has a unicorn that has not done an interview in forever. He's got Jakey Lee right now on his podcast on Talk is Jericho. I've done his podcast twice. And I've walked out of there as someone who's done hundreds of interviews all over the world. I've walked out there going, that was a wonderful conversation. And you're a genuinely curious person, which makes your podcast so great. Bob Ezrin, thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen.
Such a pleasure, Bob. Thank you so much.
And another round of applause for the great Chris Jericho.
Thank you, guys.
Cannot go wrong with Canadians. And one more time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bruce Kullick.
I'll see you at 7:30 tonight, okay? Right here.
Not going to do stand-up comedy at 12:30 in Oxford.
Thanks, man.